Brand is the foundation of your business because people buy based off of their personal and community values, and they buy based off of what that product, whether it's an organic carrot to a SaaS tool, says about them as a consumer and says about their business, especially in like the B2B space.
Every startup thinks they can ignore branding until it's too late. Today, I'm with Erica Bonser, co-founder of Fan Club Brands and head of content at Animalz. We're talking about the biggest mistakes startups make, why marketing projects take too long, and whether being a generalist makes you a better leader. If you're a marketing leader navigating early stage growth, this one's for you. Let's dive in.
When it comes to branding, there are a lot of misconceptions and things that I interact with when working with different clients. And this is everything from the solopreneur to the startup who has funding backed and like already a few employees and who are working on their product. They think that they can avoid branding until later. Like, I'm just going to focus on product first. Like, that's what people really care about. We can do that stuff, that like touchy-feely stuff later, you know, or that they think they have to get it perfect on the first time. So people who understand the importance of it and want to get into it, they really obsess about all the fine details and want it all to be perfect right from the get-go, which I think is really interesting because like these are two different types of people, one who understand brand and the impact there, and then ones that don't understand brand and its impact. And it's, you know, coming at it from kind of the wrong angle, because brand is the foundation of your business because people, and this is more of a controversial take, I would say, people buy based off of their personal and community values, and they buy based off of what that product, whether it's an organic carrot to a SaaS tool, says about them as a consumer and says about their business, especially in like the B2B space. And so to ignore it completely would be to ignore the very foundation of why people buy in the first place. And I feel like there's people think like, oh, because I care about something, so should my audience. And then to want it to be perfect is to ignore the fact that to be human is to be imperfect. And for me, when you are developing and building a brand, it's a living, breathing thing like a human, which is imperfect. And to try and get it perfect on the first time means that you are trying to get it done once so that you never have to think about it again, where you're going to
Checking a box or something.
Check in the box. And that's not how this works.
So I've definitely experienced the sort of, growth marketing, product marketing, brand marketing. Brand marketing is always at the bottom when you're talking about early stage startups in terms of priorities. So if that's true in my experience, and that's true with a lot of companies that you've worked for, what do you recommend if you're trying to, you need to get buy-in, but what do you recommend in terms of practical, like how do you get the resources to do it? Or how do you get something that the team can start to use, as you said, start to use something, start to breathe this into existence, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So there's three things here. One is brand strategy, which I think, because I want to be very clear, because a lot of times people don't understand all the little nitty-gritty components of what a brand is. So the brand strategy is like the positioning, the messaging, your mission, vision, values, all those things, like the things that let you know as a marketer or a business owner when faced with a decision, which you are every day, whether it's a hell yes or a hell no. Does this align? Does this not align? So that you can make sure that everything that you do say yes to makes sense because the strategy dictates it. And then there's a visual brand identity, right? Which is like logo, color, typography, like all those fun, beautiful elements that are created based on the strategy. And then there's brand implementation. So I always say like your website is your first touch point, especially if you don't have a brick and mortar store. This is your virtual brick and mortar store or your product touch points. So I think it's when brands or companies put brand marketing at the very bottom and they choose to do everything else, because everything has a price tag to it. If you're building a product, if you're doing something else in marketing and you don't have that solid foundation, that solid why behind everything that your brand does and stands for, now you are going off of gut instinct and like, this feels right today, or like, because I like this. And now you're going to have to go back and do more work because there's misalignment across the entire product and customer experience.
Do you have any stories that brands maybe you've worked with where you've really helped them design something that's had a huge impact on the probably brand strategy side? I'm thinking maybe something that the team didn't realize the impact that this would have after they got something like this together.
I think, so here's an extreme example. because I've worked with tons of like SaaS startups and businesses like that. I've worked with B2C, B2B. One of the companies that I think is the most interesting, even though I would say it's like one of the least sexy types of products and offerings, is I came in, I met this retirement benefits company, and they had been around for over 40 years. They were a fairly large organization, and they had never done marketing before. They said that marketing was bumping bellies over golf and beer, and that is how they built their business, which I think is funny. I mean, it's not the first time I've heard this, right? Like, especially in a very white male type of world. They were based out of Salt Lake City. And so when I came in and started to really audit and analyze everything that they've been doing, and they had multiple sub-brands under their company, and saw that the misalignment and the friction, and they're like, why doesn't this work? Why doesn't that work? And it's because it was kind of like held together with like duct tape and a prayer, where they just willed things into existence and had no real foundation or core of like who they are and why it matters to the world. And even from an employee experience perspective, things were a bit chaotic. And so I joined to start they didn't think they were getting branding. I started their first marketing team and hired on people and started to chip away at things bit by bit. And by the end, not only were they able to create new product offerings because they didn't see an opportunity until we got to that why, they were able to realign and hire new people, get rid of some people who maybe didn't fit the culture anymore. And the company grew to the size within a year and a half to be able to sell to a larger organization who they've been flirting with for a long time. But that company never saw value in them because there was such chaos and disorder.
Wow. So it's interesting that you even touched on like who you ended up hiring in other departments, or it had an impact beyond. But I mean, it makes sense because your why is really tied to everything that the business does. But it's easy to forget that and like focus on growth marketing. I think in my experience, growth marketing or product marketing just gets most of your time. So yeah, I appreciate that story.
Absolutely.
Do you have, I mean, you've already shared sort of one controversial take, but is there any view that you have on branding, any other interesting take that you have about branding in general, whether it's for startups or just in general?
There's this quote by Marty Neumeier, whom I love and have worked with for years now. And he always says that a brand is not what you say it is, it's what they say it is. So if you want to, you put all this energy and work into creating it, and you're like, this is who I am. But then when you get into that echo chamber and like hear it back and it's not what you thought it was, then like you have some work to do. But I think what's really interesting here is a lot of startups, founders are so passionate, and you have to be, because it's a ruthless experience, right? Even not being a founder and working for a startup, like you have to have a little bit of glutton for punishment kind of mentality. It's just like fast.
High tolerance for pain is what I just read that today. Founders need a high tolerance for pain.
That's a type 2 type of fun, which is the kind that hurts while you're doing it. And at the end, you're like, that was worth it, I think. Because of their passion and their intense vision for what they want to create and what they want to do in the world and with what they're building and all of that, they mistake that passion for the building something as this is what the brand is supposed to be. So like what I mean is, they're like, I like purple, so we're going with purple. Or here's who I think we are. Here's who I want us to be. And really, when you look at it, it's them reflecting themselves into the company, which a lot of times when I do brand workshops for organizations, it's kind of like a big therapy session, because it always comes out their personal preference and like how they see themselves, and that's what they want reflected here. And I have to get them to see past themselves and their ego, to really build not for themselves, but for the consumer, because the consumer only cares about themselves. They don't care about you.
I'm trying to think if there's any, like, I want to go more into this because this is really interesting. Like, you talking about a workshop that you have with companies, or you've done this with several companies. What kinds of exercises can actually bring that out and can help people realize that? Because you say it has to be something they have to realize, and then they have to decide to move forward with this new thing. So how do you do that?
I like to start with a eulogy. So I have everyone write a eulogy for the business where they envision, it's 10, 50 years into the future, and they've accomplished what they set out to do. And like, this is interesting because we're at the stage, this is like the first thing I do in the workshop. They don't know what they set out to do, but it at least gets them thinking like, what was the impact? What had to have happened in order to make that impact? What is bigger, instead of just like the business is here to make money, like how did it contribute to the world? What problems did it solve? And you did so well that you are no longer needed. You died because you solved the problem. And getting to that place, because I think when it comes to talking about death and dying, like we're so sensitive and it's such an uncomfortable place to be, but it also is a really beautiful experience because it's a reflective tool or time where you get to really see all the good that happened. And in doing that and then having people share, which is a vulnerable experience, allows people to we're able to start the conversation based off of dreams and aspirations and like the big things that actually mean something over personal preference. And I think this should be this. And then it really aligns the people within the workshop itself, which is always
really interesting because it's also very futuristic. There's no really wrong answers. It really helps everyone really share what truly is important to them and what they think. I like that eulogy. Yeah. So do you do this kind of work? Did you do this in your past life? Are you still doing it now as part of Fan Club Brands? Because I want to get into that and kind of why you started it and what you're doing with that venture.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. I would say that I've been doing brand strategy since I was 19. But I would have no idea that was what that was at the time because it wasn't marketed in that way. And it wasn't to businesses, it was to individuals. So I worked at Lululemon for over 5 years, helped them build their sister brand, and I did all these really cool things. And I loved it so much. And a big aspect of that was the goal setting culture, the like thinking bigger than yourself kind of mentality. And I led all of their goal setting workshops for adults, like groups of 200 or more, to like a yoga party, silent disco style in a park for kids. And the type of exercises that we did there, when I think about what I do now, is so similar, except you're taking it from the personal to the organizational level. And so I was doing goal setting, but really what I was doing was brand strategy for people. And then when I left Lululemon, I started my first business, which is kind of what I'm doing now, except back then I was a little bit more green in what I was doing. And I met Marty Neumeier and Andy Starr of Level C. Marty Neumeier is the guy that wrote all the books, The Brain Gap, Flip, and I trained in brand strategy, becoming a strategist, becoming a brand architect, becoming a brand specialist, and realized the power of it. And then how to lead companies through these types of experiences and workshops, and then tying that in with my marketing background. And then with Fan Club, that is what we do. It's a huge part of what we do. So we say that we help create brands that rock harder than your competition because we have a bit of a rock and roll vibe to us. But we really like to start there because we do work primarily with startups, and like startups from ground zero, blank slate, they've not even started anything, to companies who've been around for a minute and have plateaued and are bumping their head up against a wall trying to figure out how to move past it. So we always look at that from the brand strategy standpoint and the visual brand identity. And then we move from there.
I just wanted to say I will share this. I will link this in the show notes. When I landed on your page, I was just like, whoa, this offer is awesome. It's just like something as a head of marketing that I would want. It's like, give us 8 hours. We will do that thing that you've been meaning to do, but you don't have time. And I just thought the offer, the positioning, totally smart. I love it. I love that you created VIP days, the name, everything. I mean, obviously you're a branding expert. It's very clear, but I just love the page. Great job. So you did this a few years back. You launched this, I don't know, I think pandemic times?
Just after pandemic, I was unfortunately part of the tech layoffs that happened. Me and however many others who were finding themselves there and are still finding themselves in that world. And what I saw was an opportunity to fulfill a very big need, because when full marketing teams are being laid off, that does not mean that the company does not need marketing. And I've met so many times, even working at Animalz, where a lot of my clients, marketing teams of one, and they still have to perform as if they were a team of 15 or more. And so they're working with all these small little agencies who specialize in X, Y, and Z to get the work done. And at the time when we started Fan Club, a lot of agencies have been around for a long time, yes. But from a very boutique perspective, I had not really seen a lot. And so we started with the intention of being kind of like your outhouse, in-house marketing team, brand and marketing team. So that's kind of how we started, and it has really served us. And especially now working with Animalz, like it's continuing to really.
So is this, I guess this is considered a productized agency in a way. I mean, you're offering something that's like very specific. It's like 8 hours service. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, why did you decide to go that route versus like, I'm a marketing agency, I can do anything that you need anytime? I mean, you were very specific in what you could offer people, and the price is right there on the page.
Yep.
Why did you choose that?
So I'm sure any marketer listening has experienced a project, let's say a website, and you blink and a year goes by and the website's half done, like because it just takes forever to get somewhere. A larger company can afford to move at that pace. A small company, from solopreneur to that like scrappy startup, if you waited a year to get something done, they might as well close their doors. So to be able to move fast is one of the biggest gifts that we can give a startup, and to give our full attention, because for others who have worked with agencies or maybe worked at agencies, you know your attention is being split between 1 million things at all times. And so when you bounce back to, let's say, this one client project, you have to refamiliarize yourself almost with like what it is that they do and what were you doing again and what did you talk about. And so in that model sometimes, and I say this very vulnerably, we're not always doing our best work because we're just trying to survive and stay above water. And at a startup level, when you're investing that much and what you're doing is so important, for someone to give half energy and attention is not going to do it for you. So we take 100% of our time. We prep like crazy beforehand, and we get after it in one day to go from 0 to hero on a project. We build a website in a day. We do brand in a day. We do whatever crazy marketing thing you got going on in a day. And sometimes does it take 3 days? Like, yeah, but you get something and you get to launch it and continue to move forward without having, as a client, to balance your attention between giving me feedback or trying to pester me to figure out like where this and that went. So it's been received really well. People love it. And even from a client perspective, the person doing it perspective, it feels a lot yummier to my brain to be able to get in and really focus than try to juggle.
I mean, I just love the idea of focus for both you, the marketer. I mean, that's where I do my best work. That's just deep work. That is quality. It's meaningful. And you, as the recipient, you get something done. As you said, you get your expertise. I love that. Can you share like some of the projects? You don't have to name names, but like what are some of the cool things you've done in these either VIP days, so that's like an 8-hour day, or you can even do several days or weeks for people? What are some of the things that you've taken on?
So, I mean, if you go on our website, you can just noodle on all the fun websites. I mean, I do love a website because I feel like the website is where the brand strategy and visual brand identity like finally meet in one place. And you're like, oh, like here I am. You know, you just see it kind of laid out because it's messaging and the colors and the photos and like it all comes together. I mean, I love so many of the websites we've done, especially the most recent ones like Rock Rehab, one of my favorites, especially because it was so climber specific that
my husband's gonna love that. He's like he's a competition climber.
Full set into that climbing world, and the lingo, like if you're not a climber and you read it, you're gonna be very confused because it was not meant for you. So I think that's a good example of like trying to be for everyone. But even these VIP days, so we're currently working with a very large company, a company who has, you know, when I say a website in a day, we're talking 3 to 5 pages, not a 35-page website with 350 blogs attached to it. It's a bit different. However, because we're so refined in what we're doing, like we're able to time box things really well. So like, are we doing a full month of VIP days? Yes. But that big company who would have taken a year or more to do something, we're still able to get that done. And we're able to take in all their sub brands into consideration and their parent brand into consideration and do photo shoots and like all those fun things to make it come to life. So that's kind of like showing VIP days at a small scale and then at the big scale. Like they can work for both.
I love that. Well, yeah, as I said, I'll link the page for people to check out. Very cool stuff. Can you tell us more about, you started this business. What are some of the more tough parts of this? I know you said that you were laid off, so it was sort of the venture that you started. But like when you were comparing that to your full-time like life as a marketer and as a brand strategist, what are the tough things that people might not realize if they want to do something like this?
So, to all you marketers out there, and I know so many of you have considered this, especially with how volatile being a marketer is. And I mean, so many marketers are having freelance gigs on the side and working nights and evenings and weekends to make additional money and maybe carve something out for themselves. To really go after it and say goodbye to stability, even though it's volatile, it's still stable income. You're getting a paycheck every other week with this amount in it, you're getting benefits, all of those things. There's a certain personality that will thrive there. And it's someone who is okay with a certain level of risk. And depending on what you decide to do or how well connected you might be, and how resourced you are, like especially, from experience, like can you manage the finance side of the business? Can you manage the operational side of the business and execute and sell? Because you must be like multi-dimensional in that way. If you're able to do it and try things on that you've never done before, that are scary as hell, that are where at the end of the day, you're like, I worked for 14 hours and got paid $0, which is definitely going to happen more often than not, especially at first, then I'd say that this life is for you. Is it rewarding? Oh my God, the most rewarding. Do I feel an immense amount of pride? Absolutely. Am I rich? Hell no. But I know that if I were to ever, and I don't foresee this, to be honest with you, because like this life is for me. The fact that I have autonomy, freedom, I get to decide something and try it on without anyone holding me back. I get to even, say that I'm taking off today, knowing that I'm not getting paid, but I have that freedom. If I ever were to decide to go full time back into an organization, I have so much more worth as an employee because of this multidimensionality that I am forced to have as a business owner. So you can almost see it like, let's say you were to start your own business and you were to go out and for a year make $0 and work 14 hours a day and sometimes on the weekends to try and build something. I don't see the difference between that and getting an MBA. The amount of knowledge that you will have gained, the opportunities you've carved out for yourself, the networking that you've done and how connected you will be. To me, if you're able to do it, I realize there's a privileged aspect to this, is worth everything.
I love that. I never thought about it in terms of, like you said, people pay money to get an MBA, but honestly, even as a hiring manager, I value people who have experience of building something. I mean, whether that's even just having a blog, something small, or something as much as, an agency or something, that really shows the skills, like the skill set you have and the sort of grit and problem solving, all of those things that you gain through the process. So I love that. I've heard from people who've done sort of agencies or things like that, that client acquisition is kind of what kills them sometimes, because you love doing the work, you love doing the thing, but you got to go out there and sell. Was that a challenge for you? Was that sort of deterring for you? How do you view client acquisition?
Okay, well, it's a personality thing. Because I would say my business partner, so my co-founder, Jennifer Morgan, she's someone who loves to do the work. She's a fantastic seller. But does she love doing it? No, she does not do it. I love doing it, And I love doing the work. Like it brings me a lot of joy. It's yummy for my brain. I have a lot of fulfillment from it. But I am a people person at my core, and I light up when I'm able to either make connections, so get a job and then bring in other freelancers to help support that. And I feel as if I am supporting my community, my network, bringing in wonderfully talented, amazing people and giving them an opportunity, because I also know how hard it is to find a job in this environment. But then I also get a lot of joy and fulfillment when I am helping to solve someone else's problems. And that's what sales is to me. So I thankfully enjoy that aspect. And I would say if you are going to do your own thing, there's pros and cons to having joint ownership of something. Really, like, that can go bad or it can work out really well. Like, you have to be very clear on what it is that you're doing and how that all works out and how you're going to work together. But even if you are the founder and you have some other people working with you, making sure you have a really diverse talent set and not just ability, but like desire, personalities that lend themselves to certain strengths so that you're not working with people and you're all just like, I hate sales. I don't want to do it. Like, if they come to me, I will do the work. It will be great, but I don't want to talk to you. Like, you're probably not going to do that great. You have to be willing to put yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. Are there you said that you work with freelancers, or like any tips for when, at what stage to do that? Maybe that's something people think, hey, I'm going to be a solopreneur, but then actually you realize, hey, I need support. I need people. How is that process for you? And what would you recommend for like when to bring in a freelancer, or any advice there?
So there's going to be a time when you're doing your own thing. At first, a lot of what people focus on is like, I need money. So like, any project is money in my pocket and I want it, I want it, I want it. I need more, I need more. But then there's a time, and I think every founder who has not had a business before will approach this moment where you're like, oh my God, I have so much to do. My to-do list is a scroll that just keeps on going. I just fell on the floor and it keeps rolling. And I have client work to do. And if I focus on this client work, then there's no way I'm going to be able to move the business for it or sell or do anything. I might actually just collapse because my brain is going to explode. And it's this moment where you realize that you have to move beyond yourself and your own financial insecurity to make good decisions based on the business. Because if you stay in that mindset of like, well, I just need to continue to make money, you will actually stop making money because you've neglected the business. So there comes a time where you have to be willing to make less so that you can bring in other people to do the work for you so you can continue to get more. And I think it's like, it happens quicker than you think that it's going to happen. And it's hard to know that like, I could have made X, but now I'm going to make Y, but it is the right thing to do.
I really appreciate that advice, because I think a lot of people will they'll try to just push through it or something. And you said you can actually kill the business by thinking you're doing the right thing. But in reality, you need to bring in people you said faster than you realize. For you guys, how quick was it that you had to start bringing in people?
It was in the first 5 to 6 months. We had to bring in people.
Yeah. And you said you got through your connection, like through your, say that again?
You weren't anticipating that for a while.
Yeah. But it's a good problem to have. And I'm glad that you faced it. I was just going to ask, like, where did you find, you said your network was one place you looked. How are you finding people that were hiring as a whole thing in itself that is challenging? So any tips or advice that worked for you during that phase?
I am very fortunate and grateful to have been a marketing leader for so many years, had the opportunity to lead so many fantastic, amazing people who were laid off alongside of me. And so like, have some of them found their new homes? Like, yes, absolutely. But I get to still call on them and support them. And I know how they work. I've seen the quality and know how to get the best out of them. And so that's been really beneficial. Also through professional development. So Level C, the organization that I got all my brand certifications through, there's so many people that I met through those experiences over the years that I reach out to who have said like, oh, I'm working with so-and-so who does marketing ops or is like really good at all, Google Analytics and setting things up. Like they would love some help and they bring them in. So I would even say if you've ever worked with someone in the past we all have to reach out to them and then just say like, hey, like anyone on your team that you think is a rock star, are they looking for something extra? Because when I say that you're going to need people sooner rather than later, it doesn't mean that you are going to have full-time employees. A lot of the times it's like small little things here and there where it's just a few hours, or maybe it's a handful of hours, months over month for a certain client. So lean into all of the brilliant minds that you've interacted with over the years.
That's really great advice. I do have a question. We talked all about the really interesting stuff about starting a business, but you also work for Animalz, which is a content marketing agency. What led you there? And can you tell what led you there? And what do you do in that role as head of content? I'm really curious because it seems like you're busy enough with all of the fan club stuff you've got going on.
Yes. So I think that maybe this is where my glutton for punishment comes out. No, here's another benefit of working for yourself. You get to do whatever the hell you want. So I knew, especially as I'm growing fan club, that there's opportunities for me to continue to learn and to support others and doing things that my agency, like we're not a content agency. We kind of help on the other side or a certain side of marketing. That's where we specialize in. And so working with Animalz as a head of content, now I can get to do the other side of marketing that I've done for so many years. And that's the content side of marketing, which is great. And they're such I would say a complementary type of agency because of what they stand for, the quality, the types of people, their processes are so fine-tuned, and they're able to really serve startup clients in a very intimate and bespoke kind of way that now I feel as if my agency has grown, because if any client, they all need content support after we create the brand. Now I get to hand them over to Animalz, and it's a seamless experience. And working with Animalz has been just so wonderful because of that. And, Ty as a CEO, working with Tim as their head marketer, it has also taught me a lot about agency life. And yeah, in a way that maybe is a little bit more, less risky for me because it's not my business. So I get to balance my risk threshold and my desire for insecurity, or my capacity for insecurity, by doing both.
But I think just as a professional, like you said, it's two different worlds that you get to kind of do at the same time, and they are complementary. So I think that's really nice. You've been there for about almost a year, a little less than a year. Is that right? Do you feel, are you still able to give your time to Fan Club in the way that you want to, having been there?
So, as a contractual employee, you have pros and cons to everything, right? Cons is they can say goodbye to me tomorrow and have no reason. And that's just kind of part of the risk you're taking on there. There's no benefits, things like that a normal, typical employee would. But I get to have a say in how I work. So being able to be there for a set amount of hours per week or per month allows me to then balance the needs of other things in my life. And so I would say that's another thing for the audience to consider, is if working at an organization, like a big company, just having a normal full-time job is not bringing you joy, and it's something, and you'd like to entertain something else, business ownership's not the only other option. Freelancing, definitely a thing you could do. But I think the contractual workspace is something that I've seen a lot of developers and people in the product world really adopt and take on, but not a lot of marketers. And I think it's something that can feel like a normal full-time job, but you have more autonomy and more ability to say no, which is something that you don't really have if you are beholden to
a full-time employee. Yeah. That's really interesting. So in the world of content, in the last 8 months, is there any really interesting learning that you had that you think would be interesting to share? I did deep dive. People want to check out my chat with Tim Metz. We did talk about content, but you may have something else interesting to add from your experience at Animalz, because you work with so many companies and different types of companies.
So I'd say, just to go back to the startup conversation, how you work with a startup and suggest what content you do is so different than what you would do for an enterprise or a larger type of organization. And that's something I've not seen a lot of other agencies really differentiate. A lot of other agencies kind of do just a copy paste, everyone gets these things and this is how we do it. And it doesn't matter where you are in your lifespan or how much money you're making. You're going to do blogs and thank you, goodbye. When it comes to content marketing for startups, if you have to balance long-term growth with short-term gains. And a lot of bigger companies, they can go right into SEO blogs and just churn and do a lot of them all at once and be completely fine and be successful in that. But when it comes to marketing startups, most of the time, you don't have the benefit of brand recognition. Nobody knows who you are. They don't care who you are. They probably definitely want what you do, but you have to now market yourself as a founder as your lead foot in marketing. So that's a lot of thought leadership work. And then you also have to make sure that whatever you decide to do, so a topic or conversation that you would typically have in a blog, has to be very malleable and be able to work itself into a magnitude of other types of content and then fit in all these different channels and all these different ways, because a small business or a startup cannot afford to create a blog and put it on their website and just be like, I'm done. Like, it has to live on for a certain period of time in order to really get the ROI the ROI for the investment that they put into that. So working at Animalz and supporting that population has felt really good because it is a world that I understand and know, but it also, I think, differentiates Animalz as an agency because not a lot of other companies are thinking in that way because it requires more resources and energy.
I think Animalz has such a big footprint that it was always impressive. I'm a huge believer in small teams. We're a 3-person marketing team at ARC, and I think you get more done and you're more resourceful, and that's definitely just my jam. So I appreciate
And you're
small
connected
teams. Yeah, of course.
To the product, and small teams, like each individual has more opportunity to make an impact and to create something. Yeah. Which, if you're at a big company where the marketing team has been split up in so many, like every type of marketing discipline, and then like you're now in the emails team, but no, you're in like the sales sequencing team. Oh no, actually you're just like in the follow-up emails. Like, and you just like get so refined where now you've lost the vision for the bigger picture. Like that's the benefit of being on a small team.
On that point, do you feel like there's there's internet arguments over generalist versus specialist? Do you have a take on whether one is better? Is it depend on your personality in this day and age? Do you have any thoughts about being a marketing specialist versus generalist?
So I think this conversation is so funny because everyone has their own opinion on it. And I don't think there's a right or wrong. It's really just role specific. Like, do you need a specialty knife or do you need a Swiss Army knife? When someone's really, really good and really specialized at something, like, oh my gosh, like what a gem of a person to have in your team. But when things get tight and you have to let some people go and now you're expecting more of your team, like, are those people going to be able to adapt? I don't know. I mean, I've seen it. It's not an impossibility. But then I think there's something really interesting because I am a Swiss Army knife of a person. I have come from all different backgrounds. I think that there's a lot of power in being a Swiss Army knife because you are able to solve problems through multiple different lenses. I think it makes me, and people who I've worked with who fall in that Swiss Army knife category, more effective strategists because they're able to pull from a wealth of different experiences and abilities and knowledge. And I think there's no right or wrong. Do you, boo, whatever feels right. And just know that when you're going to find a job, sometimes they're going to need a Swiss Army knife, sometimes they need a specialty knife. And you can't control it. It just is what it is.
And I think it depends on your goals. Like if you want to be a business owner, I think maybe generalist has some benefits to that. But if you want to be a freelancer, for example, or even just a full-time role, and you want to be known for that one thing, it's also going to serve you well. So it depends on your personal goals, I think, and how you want to answer that.
Just personal goals, not just in like the sense of, like what you do, or do you want to be a business owner? But I think when it comes to being either a doer, so like the person executing within an organization, or being a leader of an organization, to be a Swiss Army knife is to be a better leader. Because especially, let's say if you are overseeing, when I was working at BombBomb, I was overseeing all of content. I was their director of content, and I led design teams, I led content teams, I led operations and product people all under one. So I had to understand each one of those in order to be an effective leader. So I think that's part of that goal mindset that needs to be taken into consideration.
That's an excellent point. Yes. Yeah, I really loved our conversation. I think we touched on a lot of things, but really focused on, startups, growing a business, obviously branding. Is there any final thought you'd like to leave people with? Could be marketing related, could be anything that you'd like.
I think that your success in your career is directly tied to mental health and like general awareness of people and how to best work with and communicate with other people. You're going to be not a good salesperson if you can't communicate and be empathetic and be able to relate. You're not going to be a good leader of other people if you don't have the ability to put your own feelings and trauma to the side, to not let that bleed over into the experience of others. And you're not going to be a good marketer if you don't understand basic human emotion and like not just understand it, but like really live it every day. So I think whether you're a business owner or you're going to stay in like a corporate setting or work at an agency as a freelancer or a contractor, if you go to therapy or you listen to our friend Brene Brown or We Can Do Hard Things like whatever it is, focusing on human experience is your biggest weapon in making any of that successful.
I love that. I think sometimes we can think about all the theories and all of the things out here, but in reality, it's our own minds and it's the things inside that it can seem like it's unrelated, but there's nothing that's the core, really. That's the core of it.
As a marketer, you are a microphone for the human experience. You cannot attract people to your brand, product, company if you don't evoke emotion, good, bad, any of it, within someone else. And you can only do that if you understand how to do that, or like the motives behind why people do it.
Well, thank you for your time, Erica. I will link Erica's LinkedIn. I'll link Fan Club Brands below. Really excited to see what you continue to do in your multifaceted world.